I think that with play, it's less as an antithesis to learning and more of an avenue to learning, right? It's a way for you to do a whole lot of things in a much better way. So you're harnessing kids' passion in order to promote things like, social emotional skills, self-regulation. You're able to actually help kids regulate in order for them to ultimately stay in the classroom, build relationships, and ultimately learn better because they're feeling secure, they're feeling regulated, they feel like they have people that they can go to, that they can talk to. That's all super important and foundational for student learning.
Aspire Leaders, that is the voice of Vanessa Castañeda Gill, and she's the co-founder and CEO of Social Cipher, which is a game-based social emotional learning platform for neurodiverse youth and the professionals who work with them. So we're going to talk about her company, her own experience with autism and ADHD, strategies to work with neurodivergent students, and her recent work with the Lego Foundation partnership. Before we dive into that conversation, I just want to let you know that I'm super excited to announce that I'm going to be speaking at the A&W Special Education Interlocal in Kansas on August 5th. So I'll be heading over there to do a half-day keynote on mental health, healthy habits, and self-care. So super excited about that piece, but then also going to do some breakout sessions on my second book, The Language of Behavior. So couldn't be happier to provide an energetic kickoff for the school year with this wonderful organization. If you're looking for a keynote speaker or someone to speak to your staff to kick off the school year, head over to joshtamper.com. Click on the speaking button, and there's a short form for you to fill out just to let me know what type of presentation and topic you would love to start the school year off with. All right, I'm super excited about our conversation about this platform and how to serve our neurodivergent students. So with that, let's jump into our conversation with Vanessa. Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. All right, Aspire Leaders and Teach Better Family, thank you so much for being with us once again this week. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you find so much value and wisdom from our guests this week. I have Vanessa Castañeda Gill with us, and she is a brilliant mind, and I can't wait to touch on a lot of different topics on play, social emotional learning, which is one of my favorite topics, self-regulation, making sure that we're doing all this work, not just with elementary kids, but our secondary students, which if anyone has listened to the podcast before, you know that my experience is middle school. So I have a special place in my heart for that too. So super excited. Vanessa, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, I had a chance to connect with you. What was that, like a month ago? And I loved our conversation. I loved getting to know you. And I would love also for you to share with the listeners just a little bit about your background and what you're up to right now, because you're affecting so many folks around the country.
Yeah, totally. I can probably go into my full story a little bit later, but yeah, I'm Vanessa Castañeda Gill. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of Social Cipher. I've been doing that for 6 years, and Social Cipher builds social emotional learning games and curriculum as well as software for neurodivergent youth ages 10 to 15, as well as the counselors and teachers and other educational professionals who work with them. My background comes from actually the neuroscience research space, as well as being an autistic and ADHD person myself. So it comes from that cross of sort of lived experience, a love for art and stories and characters, as well as, a background as a neuroscience researcher.
Oh, so brilliant. Okay, so obviously, and I'm making an assumption here, so fill me in if this is completely wrong, but I'm assuming that you saw a need somewhere within your life and said, you know what, this is my passion and I want to create something for other people and to help them. So what was it where you saw that light bulb moment of like, oh, I need to fill this need right here?
Yeah, you were exactly right. So what happened with me was after much trial and error, because I am a Latina, I was growing up, as a young woman, and a lot of us know that neurodivergent women, a lot of the time, it takes a much longer time for us to get diagnosed.
Sure.
We get misdiagnosed a whole lot. So after much of that trial and error, I was finally diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I had a really difficult time coming to terms with that diagnosis because of my own identity. It was really hard to find representation that felt like it matched who I was.
Yeah.
And I also believe that a lot of the time, like growing up, this was in like the, I don't know, late 2000s, mid 2010s. A lot of the representation of autism was typically like very robotic, cold and
Yes.
calculating, not social at all, doing everything on their own. And I was like, all right, well, this is the only representation I have, so I guess I'm gonna have to fit this box. And that box was really hard to fit because it just was not me. And so I think a lot of it came to like this fear of rejection and this fear of failing. Like, oh, all these stereotypes are telling me that I can't connect with people, so I'm not going to try. I'm not going to put myself in that vulnerable position. And so I really closed myself off socially to people for a very long time. I hid my diagnosis from all of my friends and like extended family for about 6 years, from the ages of 14 to 21 almost. And I, of course, developed a lot of mental health issues because of that. I fell into anxiety, depression, had a bunch of issues with my self esteem. And I actually went into neuroscience research because sadly, at the beginning, I wanted to get a better understanding of how to fix my brain, even though there was nothing wrong with it. I kind of felt like that was the issue, and I just needed to fix myself, and then everything would be fine. And as I started getting deeper and deeper into neuroscience research, I finally I think because I was in school, I was allowed to fully embrace and engage in that special interest of mine for the first time. And I found other people who were just as like nerdy and excited about the brain as I was. And it was also the first time that I felt like I was truly having an impact on people with my research, and I was able to publish and, present at all these different conferences. And I think through finding this community of like super passionate, nerdy, excited friends, as well as being able to bring my neuroscience research and this passion into it, I started to kind of like heal myself and realize that there were ways for me to connect with people. It was just something that looked a little different. And I think the other big factor, which is what turned this more into a video game, was the fact that with this community of friends, we started engaging on our passions a lot more when we started engaging in what we call fandom, which is like these fan communities for different TV shows or video games or stories. And I think once I got into that, though I didn't have any representation that I felt worked that was like canonically autistic, I started finding all of these like stories and music and movies and games that kind of allowed me to like piece together my identity and just find parts of myself in these characters and stories that I really cared about. So when I was in my actually I think my junior year of college, I was thinking back on it. I was in just like a random dorm lounge procrastinating on my homework, and I was like, man, I wonder if there's something that I can do to put all these things that I love together to help other young people like myself and make sure they didn't go through all the pain that I went through. And that's how Social Cipher started and it was formed.
I love it so much. Taking your love and your passion for things, and then also finding a way to help other folks. So, all right, I want to kind of dive into something that you said. You talked about fandom, and so
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun to think of that as a strategy to help other people. So I'm curious, like with fandom culture, how is that like important with the neurodivergent students specifically, and like how can that be implemented into the classroom?
Oh, yeah. So I think every educator and listening knows that like the kids love things like Minecraft, Roblox, like all these different like anime. There are so many different things that if you like at the mere mention of like a specific character, anything remotely like close to the thing they're interested in, they will go off talking about it and just get so excited. Um, and a lot of that is fandom. I think a big reason why that's so popular with the neurodivergent community is honestly, it's a safe space for these kids to engage in special interests, right? I think a lot of the time when you are, at least for me when I was growing up, I was and still am super, super into Star Wars. And I don't know how many people want to hear about like very minor member of the Jedi Council, Yal Poof, like over and over again and want to hear about like the entire backstory of the alternate universe of like Anakin Skywalker. I don't know if people want to hear about that, but in fandom culture, on these online communities with other, fans at conventions and all these kind of things, they live for that stuff. It's a place where you can really truly fully explore your passion and not feel like you have to mask it or hold yourself back. So a lot of the time it's where these young people feel free and feel like they can be fully themselves. And I think it's powerful. I think another big part of fandom is like the representation, right? You have this wide, just vast range of different experiences, stories, character traits that are represented there that kids can just naturally gravitate to and apply to their own lives and their own identities. And kind of like what I did of forming my identity based on these different fandoms and the values that each of these stories and franchises kind of held, that allowed me to, yeah, understand and become who I am in sort of a more safe, contained way that made sense to me. I think like the third reason that fandom is so important is because they're these sort of like contained universes that have logical most of the time logical storylines that will go every which way, but it's a system. It's not so much like life where things are not going to go in a linear pattern. You're not always going to know the reason that things happen. And so I think that these are like a safe, contained system that you can manipulate and experience as many times as you want, however you want. You can create things off of it or out of it, which is like, all these, you can create stories for alternate ways that different storylines can happen. So I think all of that, overall, it just gives you agency, a safe space to be who you are, and just a place to express your passion. And on a ways to implement it in the classroom, I think that to implement in the classroom, a lot of it is about, knowing your students, knowing what they're into, brushing up maybe a little bit on Reddit and seeing what like, young people are into nowadays, or just asking them like, what stories do you like? What are your favorite characters? Like even just starting with that and just doing, little Wikipedia synopses of what these stories are about and how might this fandom of Star Wars or Doctor Who connect to these kids? Why do I think they're drawn to it? Because you'll instantly find, these values and little pieces of the story or different challenges that the characters go through. And you're going to instantly like think of that student and be like, oh, this student is going through that thing or has this trait. I see why they feel seen by these characters. So that's an easy way to do that.
Yeah. If you want to see a student light up, just ask them about what they're a fan of.
Mm,
And you'll find out real quick all of the information that's rattling around in their brain, and they're quick to share. So I think it makes a personal connection, but then also it gets them excited. And especially if you can connect it to the subject matter, goodness sakes, they will absolutely fall in love with that project. So I wish I had a Star Wars project. When I was in school, I would have lit up too. Talking about fandom, though, I want to talk real quick. If anyone is watching on YouTube, they saw me just pop open a little bit of a magic mind. So I want to talk real quick about why I'm such a huge fan, real quick, Vanessa, of this wonderful drink. I know for my longtime listeners, my Aspire leaders, you have heard me talk about brands that I fall in love with and I believe in and I use all the time. And one of those things that I love to talk about is Magic Mind. So if you heard last week with the phenomenal Jerry Colbert talking through, just a lot of, the low energy, trying to be healthy. He actually talked about some mental health stuff too, Vanessa, which I think you would fall in line with so much. He talked about meditation. But for myself, I was looking for things like, how do I boost energy, right? As a leader in a building, I constantly was struggling with that. Healthy ingredients. I was always looking for things that was easy and, right in front of me, which is typically very sugary, high caffeination, a lot of chemicals. So that wasn't good for me. And then something that was easy. And these are super simple. They're very tiny, but they have a big punch. They, like I said, those ingredients to get your mind sharper, low stress, higher energy. And then, they always talk about it as a mental performance shot. I think it's the best way to describe it. So if you're interested in trying it, which I highly recommend, you can go over to magicman.com/aspire-to-lead-trial. And I'm going to throw that up on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. And it'll take you where you can get 3 Magic Mind drinks for free. All you have to do is in the checkout, put in Aspire to Lead trial, and it won't cost you a dime. So make sure that you're trying it out. See, like I said, the sharper mind, lower stress, higher energy as soon as you are taking that drink. And I always love taking it in the morning. If I need a boost in the afternoon, maybe in the early evening, like right now, I need a little jolt, then I'll take one of these Magic Mind. I immediately feel just the wonderful things that are in there. So make sure, again, you're heading over to magicmind.com, start a lead trial, and get your free drinks just for the month of July. So with that, Vanessa, you had touched on a little bit of play. And I know, unfortunately, when people hear that term and they think of school, it's kind of like two separate entities. And I would love for you just to talk through not only how play can be such a vital tool in the classroom, but then also, learning through story and how that could be used, in a creative and fun way, maybe with subject matter, but then also I know it could be used with like social emotional learning too.
Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, I think what you touch on too with sort of like the stereotypes of play is right. And I think the sad reality is that as we grow out of, these younger ages, especially like when you hit middle school, it starts to become more about
Yep.
conforming and doing things right and not looking like you're anywhere out of line to your peers, which means that, it's a lot harder and scarier to fail. And I think that what play does is it normalizes that failure a lot more, and it allows you to honestly take yourself a little less seriously in a way, which we all know we need that in middle and high school especially. And so I think that with play, it's less as an antithesis to learning and more of an avenue to learning, right? It's a way for you to do a whole lot of things in a much better way. So you're harnessing kids' passion in order to promote things like, yeah, social emotional skills, self-regulation. You're able to actually like help kids regulate in order for them to ultimately stay in the classroom, build relationships, and ultimately learn better because they're feeling secure, they're feeling regulated, they feel like they have people that they can go to, that they can talk to. That's all super important and foundational for student learning. And I think that what really made this apparent to us, I mean, of course, we're a video game company, like we've believed in learning through play for since day one. But for those that need a little bit more of a breakdown, we have these amazing partners with the Lego Foundation. So everyone knows Lego itself for like the bricks, which the bricks are amazing, they are genius. But I think that one huge strength and huge thing that we learned from the Lego Foundation after going to Denmark and doing a boot camp at their headquarters as part of our partnership was how much research they have on learning through play. And I think the best way to break it down is through their 5 principles of learning through play. So, when it comes to play, the way that kids learn can be broken down into this kind of 5 piece mechanism. And there are 5 different values that go with learning through play that is really effective. So, play should be joyful. So it's something where kids can feel kind of the dopamine and the joy of feeling success and also enjoying a task while they're doing it, which is, where stuff like story and lore and characters can come in. That's joyful stuff. The second area or principle of learning through play is something that's like socially interactive. So a place where you're communicating ideas with peers or with teachers and you're understanding other people's perspectives over a shared experience like a video game or even just a game you play in class. It's also something that should be actively engaging. So I think that with a lot of the uncertainty going on in the world right now, and I think especially as a young person, you're not told all of the context of everything you do every day or of why you're learning something. You always get kids that are like, why am I going to need this? Like, why am I going to need to learn this? And I think that that lack of context provides a lot of uncertainty for kids. So if you're giving them play that is actively engaging and that makes them an agent and have an active role in solving problems and in being mentally immersed in figuring out how a game works and how to make their own path, that's going to be a huge part of learning and taking their own agency back and kind of eliminating some of that uncertainty that they're constantly feeling every day. The last 2 principles are meaningful. So I think that kind of to go along with that actively engaging, having meaningful play is huge because meaning is what transitions things like facts into actual application and conceptual understanding. And it's what allows kids to connect their playful, seemingly frivolous, if you want to make it that way, experience it allows them to connect that playful experience to things that they already know. And I think that's huge. And I think it's also about being iterative, which is the last principle. And that's the biggest part in terms of like being unafraid to fail, being able to have an experimental mindset, a growth mindset, and like really flexible thinking. For me as a founder, and I think for most of us, being able to have that flexibility that comes through play, being able to take on challenges when you don't even know how to start, but you're going to learn, and knowing that you're able to be changeable and flexible and that you can learn things and you can fail at things and that's okay. I think that kind of mindset is what allows you to do great things and allows you to excel in your career, your personal life, all of that.
Okay, I gotta ask, how was that trip to Denmark for a Lego? Goodness sakes, that must have been amazing.
It was so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we've gotten to go twice because we've been in two partnerships with them, a 1 year partnership last year, and then this year we actually kicked off our long-term partnership with them.
Nice.
And they're amazing. Fun fact, they have like a full, real, like actual size Bugatti that is made entirely of Legos, like
Oh my
seats,
goodness.
tires, and all. It's
Wow.
incredible. And they have so many different types of espresso on tap, like anywhere you go. It's so good. Like, it's
Sounds like
great.
heaven. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my
All right.
gosh, any hour of the day. Yeah.
It's probably good I'm not there. I would probably try to drink every last drop of that. So
Like
I'm gonna
literal
get.
faucets.
That's dangerous for me. I'm
Yeah.
just letting you know.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
You have some awesome projects going on right now, so I want to touch on a few of them. So you got a phenomenal blog series going on supporting students through play. So I want to give you an opportunity to share about those blogs and where might folks find them also.
Yes, definitely. So, yeah, we have a fabulous blog series that is all about different resources on supporting neurodiverse youth in the classroom and at a systems level. It covers everything from helping with them with self-regulation to understanding how video games can promote social emotional skills and learning. Also mentions our video game, which is called Ava,
Yeah.
and like how you can use that in the classroom, the multiple use cases. And we're actually having a video series on YouTube that's coming out in a little bit that will also feature sort of like interviews with subject matter experts specifically on neurodiversity and social emotional learning in the classroom. So you'll want to follow us at socialcipher.com, join our newsletter. We are also just at Social Cipher on most of our platforms like Twitter, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Yeah, and those are the best places you can find us.
Awesome. Well, for those who are watching on YouTube, you've had the pleasure of seeing the website pop up throughout the interview. So I'll also have that on joshstamper.com. Also, it'll be in all the show notes, both on your podcast player and on YouTube. So make sure that you're clicking on that link and making sure that you're seeing those resources, but then also just ways that, you can find Vanessa and throw a contact as far as an email, asking questions. I mean, as far as neurodivergent topics in general, I think it's something that is scarce. I don't know if you feel that way too, Vanessa, but it's such an important topic. However, I feel like there's not a whole lot of information out there. So I'm hoping folks can dive into, all of the resources that you've provided. I know on your website, you've got a lot of things on there for folks. So highly recommend everyone going to the website and just exploring a little bit and grabbing some wonderful resources. With that, Vanessa, I feel like we've talked a lot about play today, but I want to kind of bring it back to our aspiring and current leaders. So if there's something they can do tomorrow, next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend them do?
Oh, yeah. And this is probably going to be very predictable, but I would definitely want you to do it. I want you to play. And I'm not like,
Yes.
I mean, I want you to go outside and like play, I don't know, like play capture the flag or just chase around your kids, like, or play a video game or even get some blocks out, go buy a Lego set from the Lego store and just build something. I think that just try to engage and play for like 30 minutes to an hour and like have no screens around you and just see where your mind wanders and how it brings up all these new thoughts and different things that may have been just locked away in your busy day-to-day brain. I think it'll be huge.
Oh my goodness. You're bringing back memories, like as an administrator, being able to jump into games that teachers invited me to come, not just to watch and observe, but actually be a participant. And those were such fun days to, do marshmallows and hot chocolate games and things like that. It just brings out just a different side of the students that you don't always get to see, and something that they remember all the time. So I would play a game with a sixth grader. They're moving on to high school as an eighth grader, and they'll bring up the game that I played with them 2 years ago, as a memory. It does last a long time, and it's something that they enjoy seeing leaders on the campus kind of step outside of themselves and have some fun. So love that suggestion. I hope everyone listening finds some way to play, either with your students, with your staff, but have some fun. We need more of that in our life. All right. With that, will you real quick, Vanessa, just share out, how folks can connect with you one more time? I know you mentioned that earlier, but website, social media, what's the best way for them to get more information and connect with you?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so you can find us at socialcipher.com. You can also find us at Social Cipher on all of the social media channels, including YouTube. And then you can also, if you really need a resource, but you don't know which resource to pick of our vast blog series, as well as our SEL activities, just email us at ahoy.socialciphergame.com. Our game is space pirate themed. That's why we are Ahoy. Ahoy@socialciphergame.com, and we'll email you the resource that fits your needs.
Yeah. And you're super accessible. So if anyone is thinking hey, I do want more information, Vanessa is wonderful. Like I said, we've had multiple conversations, and she's just a wealth of information. So I highly suggest you reach out and head over to that website, socialcipher.com. And then, like I said, I'll have a bunch of links and things at joshuastamper.com. And then, for those who are watching on YouTube, I appreciate you. Make sure that you're hitting the subscribe button, but that's at Joshua Stamper's the channel. If you're listening on a podcast player, but want to see, all the phenomenal things in Vanessa's background, me with my magic mind. I mean, there's a whole lot of things going on in video that you're missing out. So you can also see us over at the Teach Better YouTube page also. So you can add to that growing community. And with that, I wanted just to mention one last time, Magic Mind, if you want your free trial, make sure you're going to magicmind.com/aspire to lead trial. Make sure you're using the code aspire to lead trial in the checkout to make sure that it is free of charge. So Vanessa, like I said, it's just always a pleasure to speak with you. And I just thank you so much for sharing about, what a wonderful company you've created, how you're just affecting so many folks in education, and the importance of play. I think it's wonderful, all the things that you're doing. I just appreciate you being on Aspire to Lead.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. This is great.